Get down from that ladder before you burn this theater to the ground. Marcus Reed kept one hand on the old spotlight as his 9-year-old daughter clutched her mother's worn gloves below him and whispered, "Dad, that light remembers Mom." He pulled the switch. Gold light cut through the dust, and Evelyn Whitmore appeared across the red curtain as CEO Claire Whitmore entered holding the demolition order. At the electrical panel, Dale Mercer reached for the master cutoff. 3 hours earlier, Marcus had been kneeling beneath that same spotlight with the smell of hot dust and machine oil caught in his throat. The Bellwether Theater was nearly empty, stripped of framed posters, brass railings, and anything the demolition company thought could be sold. A yellow tag hung from the light's cracked housing. Scrap, do not repair. Marcus ran his thumb over the letters without removing it. He had spent 20 years learning that broken equipment often told the truth more clearly than the people who condemned it. Behind him, wind slipped through the warped stage door and stirred a row of discarded programs across the floor. Nia sat in the first row beside Rosa Alvarez, her sneakers not quite touching the carpet. She held Lena's gloves carefully in her lap, as if the faded leather could still remember the shape of her mother's hands. 7 minutes after the CEO arrives, "The power goes off," Owen Pike said from the aisle. He wore a clean charcoal coat and the patient expression of a man explaining something unfortunate but necessary. "We all loved this place once, Marcus. But responsible people know when sentiment becomes a safety risk." Marcus looked at the spotlight's exposed cable. The insulation was old, but the copper beneath it was bright. Too bright. Someone had cut it recently and pushed the severed ends back into the casing. He did not accuse anyone. He only asked for 10 minutes and a low-voltage test. Owen smiled as if Marcus had confirmed something embarrassing. "Your badge has been suspended. Don't make this harder in front of your daughter." Marcus glanced toward Nia. She had heard him. Her chin lowered, but she did not cry. He crossed the stage, crouched beside her, and tightened the loose lace on her left shoe. "You stay with Miss Rosa," he said. "No stairs. No wires." "Are you in trouble?" "I'm fixing a light." It was not the whole answer, but it was the only promise he could safely make. He returned to the ladder with his father's dented metal toolbox and the ceramic fuse he had purchased with the last $18 in his wallet. That money had been meant for dinner. He had spent it because Rosa had told him 6 neighborhood children were coming to say goodbye to the stage where Lena once taught them to sing. Marcus did not know Evelyn Whitmore's name. He did not know a public trust existed. He only knew that people deserved one final light when a place they loved was being taken from them. When Claire entered, her heels struck the aisle in measured clicks. Owen straightened. Dale moved closer to the power panel. Marcus completed the connection, lowered the voltage, and climbed. The spotlight shuddered beneath his palm. Nia rose only halfway from her seat and pointed toward the curtain. "Dad." The name appeared. Claire's silver pen slipped from her fingers and rolled beneath the seat. For one breath, no one moved. Then Dale killed the power, swallowing the letters in darkness. Claire's voice came cold and controlled. "Who put that image inside my theater?" Marcus descended one rung at a time. "I repaired a light. Whatever it remembers was here before me." Owen stepped toward Dale and said quietly, "Cut power before the EW plate overheats." Marcus stopped with one boot still on the ladder. No one had opened the spotlight. No one had read the code hidden inside it. And Marcus had never told Owen there was an EW plate. Marcus kept one boot on the ladder. "What did you call it?" Owen's expression did not change. "Get down." "You said EW plate." The emergency lights cast a thin red line across Owen Pike's polished shoes, while the smell of overheated dust still hung above the stage. Somewhere in the dark auditorium, Claire Whitmore's silver pen finished rolling beneath a seat. "Mr. Reed," Claire said, each word controlled. "Step away from the equipment." Marcus descended slowly, keeping both hands visible. "Dale." Mercer stood beside the electrical panel with his fingers resting on the master cutoff, as though he had just prevented a disaster instead of causing the darkness. Owen moved into the aisle and lowered his voice into the patient tone he used with donors, inspectors, and people he wanted removed without appearing cruel. Claire, Marcus has been struggling since his wife passed. He cares about this building, but grief can make a person see meaning where there isn't any.
Nia shifted the desiderosa.
Her small hands tightened around Lena's faded gloves. A local reporter near the rear doors whispered to her cameraman, but the words traveled easily through the empty theater. The maintenance guy staged it. Marcus heard Nia inhale. He crossed the stage before the camera could turn toward her and placed himself between the lens and the first row. "Keep her out of this," he said. The reporter lowered the microphone only an inch. Owen gave Marcus a sympathetic look that felt colder than an insult. "No one is blaming your daughter. We're trying to protect her from a situation you created. I repaired a severed wire. Without authorization. After I reported it." Claire watched Marcus rather than Owen. His work shirt was faded at the elbows, one cuff dark with machine grease, and his boots had left pale dust on the black stage floor. He looked exactly like the kind of man Owen's explanation was designed to diminish. Hourly labor, suspended badge, no lawyer waiting outside. Yet Marcus did not ask for mercy. He crouched in front of Nia and retied the lace on her left sneaker, the same one that had come loose earlier. "You stay with Miss Rosa," he said quietly. "I'm right here." Nia looked past him toward the dead spotlight. "Did we do something wrong?" No. Marcus stood before the answer could become a speech. Dale signaled to 2 security officers. "We need his tools secured. Possible tampering, electrical damage, unauthorized access." One officer reached for Marcus's dented metal toolbox. Marcus placed a hand on the lid, not to resist, but to stop him from lifting it. "Photograph it first." Dale frowned. "That isn't necessary. Every tool, every pocket, before it leaves this stage." For the first time, Claire looked away from Marcus and toward Dale. "Why?" Marcus removed his hand. "Because if something appears in that box later, I want a record of what was in it now." A silence settled beneath the emergency lights. Claire's face remained guarded, but her attention sharpened. "Photograph everything," she ordered. Dale's jaw tightened before he covered it with a professional nod. As the officers documented the tools, Owen handed Claire a suspension notice already printed on Whitmore letterhead. It blamed Marcus for delaying site preparation, interfering with safety procedures, and creating potential liability during an executive inspection. His final week's pay would be held pending review. Owen offered him the paper with both hands, almost respectfully. "This is temporary. Cooperate, and we can keep it from affecting future employment." Marcus read the first page. The time printed at the top was 4:12 p.m. The spotlight had not come on until 4:26. The document accusing him of the incident had been prepared 14 minutes before it happened. He folded the notice once and placed it on the edge of the stage. "You wrote the ending early," he said. Owen's smile thinned. Dale climbed onto the stage and pulled a white handkerchief from his coat. He wiped the brass rim of the spotlight, smearing away a clean streak between years of soot. "Just checking for heat damage." "Stop," Claire said. Dale froze. She stared at the dark mark on the cloth, then at the 2 screws holding the rear plate. One was brown with age. The other shone almost silver beneath the dust. Claire did not look at Marcus with trust, but she no longer looked at him as the only suspect. "No one touches this fixture again until an independent inspector arrives," she said. Owen began to object. "That could delay demolition. 12 hours. The building is unsafe. Then 12 hours should protect all of us." Security lifted the spotlight's heavy floor stand to slide an evidence marker beneath it. A brittle piece of paper, blackened along one edge, slipped from a narrow seam in the metal base and landed near Claire's shoe. She bent without touching it. Under the soot, 3 words remained visible: Whitmore Arts Trust. Claire remained crouched beside the burned paper when a dull metallic pounding came from behind the stage. "Help!" Rosa's voice was muffled by the fire door. "The lock won't release." Water began creeping beneath the door in a thin silver line, carrying the smell of rust and wet cardboard into the auditorium. Marcus looked once at the fragment marked Whitmore Arts Trust, then toward the dark hallway. "Nobody moves that paper," Claire ordered. "We need photographs first." "The emergency latch is mechanical," Marcus said. Owen stepped between him and the corridor. "You're suspended. The safety crew will handle it." Another strike hit the door, weaker this time. Marcus handed his phone to Claire's independent attorney and pointed its camera toward the paper. "Keep recording." Then he turned away from the first thing that might have cleared his name. The hallway was black except for the red pulse of a battery-powered exit sign. Marcus knelt beside a recessed panel, opened it with the edge of a coin, and found the manual crank folded inside. Owen followed at a careful distance, speaking in the calm, reasonable voice of someone protecting policy. "Marcus, you are increasing the company's liability. Rosa is behind that door. Professionals are coming. She's here now." Marcus fitted the crank into the release shaft. The mechanism resisted, metal grinding against metal, and pain tightened across his knuckles as he turned. On the other side, Rosa coughed. Water spread around Marcus's boots, cold enough to seep through the cracked leather. The door finally moved 3 inches. He braced one shoulder against it and pushed until Rosa appeared, clutching the handles of 2 cardboard archive boxes, while a third floated against the wall behind her. "Leave them," Owen said. "They're old programs." Marcus took the boxes from Rosa before answering. "She comes first." He guided her into the corridor, removed his faded work jacket, and folded it beneath her knees. Only after Rosa's breathing slowed did he return for the records. He lifted the wettest box above the waterline and carried it against his chest, letting the dirty runoff soak through his shirt rather than tilt the papers inside. Claire watched from the doorway. She had expected him to demand access to the burned fragment, to defend himself, or to use the emergency as proof that Bellwether still needed him. Instead, he checked Rosa's pulse, replaced the exit light battery, and asked Nia to stay beside the first row where the floor was dry. Nia came only close enough to take his hand for a second. "Are we still getting dinner?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked at the ceramic fuse receipt folded in his wallet.
$18.
Almost everything he had left until the end of the week, assuming Owen released his pay. "We'll figure it out." Rosa heard him. She tried to press a $20 bill into his wet palm. Marcus closed her fingers around it. "Keep it for the bus home." Owen glanced at Claire as if Marcus's refusal proved nothing. "He likes being needed." Some men confuse that with being responsible. Marcus did not answer. He used money from his wallet to send a stagehand to the hardware store for waterproof tape, then helped Rosa seal the damaged boxes before the water reached the lower pages. As he lifted one bundle, a program slipped free and opened across the floor. Its cream-colored cover bore the same 7-pointed star Claire carried on her silver pin. Nia pointed from a safe distance. "That's Mom's old name." Rosa adjusted her glasses. Halfway down the scholarship page, beneath a faded photograph of teenage performers, was a single line. "Lena Brooks, Evelyn Whitmore Youth Arts Scholar." Marcus stared at it without touching the paper. Lena had spoken about Bellwether, about the first stage that made her feel seen, but she had never told him who paid for the program. At the bottom of the technical credits, another notation appeared: "Closing Spotlight, Unit L7, Q27, EW plate." Claire's eyes moved from the program to Owen. "You said every record before 2005 was destroyed in the flood." Owen looked toward the rescued boxes. "I was told they were." Rosa wiped water from a fresh inventory label attached to the side. The date printed on it was 6 months old. Marcus asked the attorney to bag the program and document where it had fallen. He did not claim it proved fraud. He did not claim Lena's name gave him ownership of the truth. He only said, "My wife's memory explains why I stayed. The records have to speak for themselves." Nia looked at the words EW plate, then toward Owen with the plain confusion of a 9-year-old who had heard adults contradict themselves. Why did Mr. Owen know what it was before Miss Rosa saved the book? Claire looked down at Marcus's soaked shirt, at the money he had spent protecting records that might never help him, and then at the program that would have been ruined if he had chosen his own defense over Rosa's safety. For the first time, she understood that his quiet kindness had not distracted them from the evidence. It had saved the first piece of it. The program Rosa had saved did not clear Marcus Reed. To Claire Whitmore, it created a new problem. Lena's name beside Evelyn's scholarship made Marcus's attachment to Bellwether understandable, but it also gave him a motive Owen could use. He knew there was a connection, Owen said softly. Maybe not every detail, but enough to build a story around it. Marcus stood in his soaked work shirt while the independent attorney sealed the program in a clear evidence sleeve. My wife never told me who funded the scholarship. And we only have your word for that, Claire replied. Her voice was not cruel. That made the doubt heavier. She had a demolition delay costing thousands by the hour, a burned paper fragment on the stage, and an employee who had repaired forbidden equipment using his own money. Kindness did not make him innocent. Grief did not make him dishonest. Neither fact was proof. The spotlight was moved beneath a white work lamp on a steel inspection table. A city electrical inspector, a museum conservator, and Claire's outside counsel stood around it in gloves and protective glasses. Marcus remained behind a yellow line taped across the floor. He was allowed to answer questions but not touch the fixture. Nia sat beside Rosa near the aisle, turning Lena's old gloves over in her lap. Owen watched from the doorway with his hands folded behind his back. Dale leaned against a column, his expression composed, though the toe of his polished boot kept tapping the concrete. The conservator removed the rear housing. Inside, the glass gobo rested in a brass carrier darkened by years of heat. Its letters were carved backward so they would project correctly through the lens. Around the rim, beneath soot and oxidation, the code EW7 was visible. A stripe of black paint covered a second line of engraving. Could this have been inserted recently? Claire asked. Possibly, the conservator said. Age can be estimated, not assumed. Claire looked at Marcus. Did you ever open this housing before today? No. Did your wife own any theater equipment? Not that I know of. Could you have found that plate in the archive? Marcus held her gaze. I could have. I didn't. Owen sighed with practiced sympathy. That is the difficulty with emotional claims. They ask us to trust what cannot be checked. Marcus did not answer him. He watched the inspector angle the fixture beneath the lamp. The copper wire inside was dull with age except at one severed end, where the metal shone bright and clean. Beside it, tiny silver filings clung to the insulation. Marcus spoke without stepping over the line. Put the cut under side light. The inspector shifted the lamp. A straight compression mark appeared across the copper. What are we looking at? Claire asked. Old wire phrase, Marcus said. That one was pinched and cut. Dale uncrossed his arms. Or damaged during removal. Marcus looked at the mounting bolts. Dust lay unbroken around them. The fixture wasn't removed. The room slowed. The inspector examined the cut through a magnifier, then nodded once. Recent mechanical damage is possible. Not proven. Possible. Owen moved closer to the table. The building has had dozens of contractors. A cut wire does not establish intent. His explanation was reasonable, but his hand reached toward the brass carrier before the conservator blocked him. No contact. Beneath the old insulation, the inspector found a folded slip of paper browned by heat. It was a repair receipt dated October 17, 1998. The typed lines listed Bellwether Unit L7, Q27, and payment from the Evelyn Whitmore Community Arts Fund. Claire studied the date, then glanced toward the program carrying Lena's name. This could have been planted with the gobo. Marcus nodded. Test it. There was no offense in his voice, only discipline. The conservator placed the receipt beneath ultraviolet light. Fibers glowed unevenly across the paper, but a hidden county watermark emerged near the bottom. Marcus noticed the black paint on the gobo had softened beneath the warmth of the lamp. Use angled light, he said. Don't scrape it. The conservator tilted the glass. Under the paint, 6 characters appeared. Deed 14B. Owen spoke too quickly. That file was lost when L7 was retired after the flood. Claire turned her head. No one had read the unit number aloud from the receipt. No one had mentioned a flood. Marcus asked one quiet question. How do you remember a record you say no longer exists? Owen's face remained composed, but Dale's tapping foot stopped. The conservator returned to the receipt and adjusted the ultraviolet beam. Beneath the county watermark, another line surfaced. Riverton County Recorder. Reference 14B. Claire ordered her attorney to search the county database under Evelyn Whitmore's name. The result came back empty. The deed number existed on the glass, the receipt, and the watermark, but according to the public record, it had never been filed. The empty county search did not erase the number 14B. It made Claire Whitmore trust everyone in the room a little less. By sunrise, she had moved the glass gobo, the repair receipt, and Lena's program into a climate-controlled rehearsal room under independent custody. A museum optical technician arrived with a portable projector, a low-heat LED lamp, and a new brass frame that had never touched bellwether equipment. Marcus stays behind the line. No one from this theater handles the glass. Every step is recorded. Claire placed her phone face down beside the evidence log. The ventilation system hummed above them, loud in the absence of conversation. Marcus stood behind yellow tape with his damp work shirt changed for an old gray thermal Rosa had found in a costume box. Nia sat near the open doorway, with a carton of milk and a wrapped muffin Claire's assistant had brought from a diner. She looked less frightened now, though Lena's gloves remained folded beside her knee. Owen watched from the far wall. Dale had returned in a fresh suit, carrying the expression of a man attending a routine inspection. The technician lowered the gobo toward the new frame. Marcus saw the retaining ring tilt before anyone else did. One edge of the glass settled deeper than the other. Stop! Dale gave a small laugh. He can't help himself. Marcus did not cross the tape. The pressure is uneven. Tighten that ring and the glass may crack. The technician checked the frame, loosened the screw, and found a warped spacer beneath it. He's right. The room quieted. Marcus could have stepped forward and taken control. Instead, he pointed to the replacement spacers in the technician's case and let her finish her own work. Use the fiber one, he said. Metal will hold too much heat. Owen folded his arms. We are turning ordinary maintenance advice into theater. Then the result should be ordinary, Claire replied. The lights dimmed. The projector clicked once, and a clean circle of gold appeared on the practice curtain. Evelyn Whitmore filled the center. The 7-pointed star sharpened above her name. Then, as the technician adjusted the focus, a narrow ring of smaller letters emerged around the edge, held for public arts use. See Deed 14B. A metal chair stopped scraping across the floor. Someone near the evidence table had been whispering and did not finish the sentence. Even the air conditioning seemed to grow louder. Marcus looked at the words, then at the technician. Can the theater's wiring create that image? No, she said. The inscription is physically cut into the glass. Could I have made it yesterday? She examined the oxidation under magnification. Not with this heat pattern, this alloy aging, or this manufacturing process. It was not complete vindication. It did not prove who had cut the wire, hidden the receipt, or removed the deed from the database. But it proved Marcus had not created the projection through some secret electrical trick. Proved the message had existed long before he repaired the light. Nia let out a breath and took a small bite of her muffin. Marcus noticed and gave her one quiet nod. He did not look at Owen. He did not ask anyone to apologize. The technician matched the maker's code on the brass rim to a theatrical optics shop that had closed 20 years earlier. Claire's attorney pulled archived tax records from the State Business Index. The original invoice listed the purchaser as Evelyn Brooks Whitmore. Brooks, Claire said. Rosa looked toward Lena's program. Lena Brooks. For one moment, the matching name appeared to suggest a hidden family connection, but the dates and records showed none. Brooks had been Evelyn's maiden name and Lena's unrelated birth name. The coincidence had buried the transaction beneath the wrong search terms for years. Claire's fingers settled slowly on the folder. Search the county microfilm under Evelyn Brooks. Preserve every result. No deletion requests. No internal edits. Owen stepped forward with concern arranged carefully across his face. Claire, this is becoming larger than it needs to be. Let me handle the archive privately before rumors damage your mother's name. Her name survived inside a condemned light, Claire said. It can survive an independent search. She ordered a 72-hour hold on demolition and sent the evidence files to outside forensic counsel. Owen nodded as though he respected the decision. Then he turned away and typed beneath the cover of his coat. He deleted the message almost immediately, unaware that Whitmore Company phones backed up every outgoing communication. The recovered words were brief. Move the archive box. Minutes later, the county clerk found microfilm filed under Evelyn Brooks Whitmore. Deed 14B was real, but attached to it was a second document bearing Evelyn's signature. A release of public arts covenant that appeared to prove she had willingly surrendered Bellwether before she died. The release of public arts covenant lay beneath the glass cover of the county microfilm reader. Evelyn Whitmore's signature dark and steady at the bottom. For several seconds, no one spoke. The machine's fan hummed against the quiet, and the blue-white light flattened every face around the table. She signed it, Owen said at last. That should settle the matter. Claire did not answer. Her thumb rested against the 7-pointed star engraved on her silver pen while the county clerk printed the document, page by page. The release stated that Bellwether had become unsafe, financially unsustainable, and no longer capable of serving the public. Attached to it was an engineering summary citing repeated failures in the theater's Vanguard FX 400 fire alarm system. Marcus read the equipment name twice. He did not reach for the paper. What date is on that release? Claire's attorney looked down. November 6, 2006. Marcus turned toward the fire control cabinet mounted beside the rehearsal room door. Its gray panel still carried the city inspection sticker. That system wasn't here in 2006. Owen's expression remained polite. You cannot possibly remember every piece of equipment installed in this building. Marcus walked to the cabinet, keeping his hands visible. He pointed to the manufacturer's plate without touching it. Vanguard FX 400. Serial number ending 3197. I helped install it in 2011, 3 years after Mrs. Whitmore died. The printer stopped. A final sheet hung halfway from the tray. Claire looked from the release to the metal plate. Can that be verified? City fire inspections. Purchase invoice.
Installation permis.
Marcus stepped back. Don't use my memory. Pull the records. Owen's attorney asked for a private recess. Marcus could have pressed harder. He could have accused Owen in front of everyone, could have used the false date to humiliate the man who had withheld his pay and called his grief unstable. Instead, he asked Claire's counsel to preserve the original file before anyone left the room. If that document is false, he said, anger won't make it stronger evidence. Claire ordered the city records opened on speakerphone. 12 minutes later, an archived invoice arrived from Riverton Fire Safety Services. The Vanguard system had been purchased in March 2011 and installed that April. The serial number matched the plate Marcus had identified. Evelyn had been dead for 3 years when the equipment named in her supposed release entered the building. Claire slowly lowered the document onto the table. The paper looked clean, official, complete. That was what made it frightening. It had not been created carelessly. Someone had known which language to use, which seal to copy, and which fear would make future decision-makers stop asking questions. The forensic attorney pulled the county notary ledger for November 6, 2006. Evelyn's name did not appear. Neither did Bellwether Theater. A second search found that the notary stamp printed on the release had been reissued 2 years after the date on the document. Owen dabbed his forehead with a folded handkerchief. Records are migrated incorrectly all the time. This can be reviewed without turning it into a public spectacle. It was already public when my company scheduled bulldozers, Claire said. Her voice was quiet, but the room changed around it. The outside forensic team began connecting the release to the demolition file. Dale's permit had been issued 13 days before the final structural inspection. Badge logs showed Owen entering the archive room at 2:14 in the morning 2 nights earlier. Hallway footage captured him leaving with a box labeled 14B, though the camera angle did not show what was inside. Dale claimed he had never handled the box. Then an investigator found a garage invoice for his company truck, dated the following morning, documenting a fresh dent and cardboard fibers caught in the rear door latch. Parking lot video showed Owen lifting a large archive box into that same door. The evidence still had limits. A box was not a confession. A dent was not proof of forgery. Marcus said so before Owen's lawyer could. Let the records carry what they can carry. Claire looked at him differently then, not with pity and not with gratitude, but with the first hard measure of respect. He had been given a weapon and refused to swing it beyond the truth. The investigation widened. Restoration funds meant for Bellwether had been paid to a consulting company owned by Owen's sister-in-law. 3 invoices used identical photographs to claim different repairs. Maintenance. Complaints from Rosa and 2 former stagehands had been marked resolved, though no work orders existed. 17 minutes of security footage had been disabled using Owen's administrator account. This was no longer one missing deed or one cut wire. It was a pattern built to make neglect look natural, failure look inevitable, and demolition look merciful. Claire turned over her company email archive, board approvals, and internal payment records to outside auditors, knowing the board might remove her for exposing the project. Owen's phone vibrated on the table. He covered the screen too late. A recovered company backup displayed the message he had deleted after the projector test. Move the archive box before Whitmore sees her mother's original amendment. Beyond the glass doors, reporters were already gathering beneath the Bellwether marquee. Claire looked at the forged release, the permit dates, the camera stills, and Marcus's suspended badge lying beside the evidence log. No closed-door settlement, she said. Tomorrow's hearing stays public. By 9 the next morning, every seat in the Bellwether Theater faced the stage where Marcus Reed had been ordered to climb down. The city council sat behind folding tables beneath the dead red curtain. Reporters lined the aisles. South Ward residents filled the worn velvet seats, while Dale Mercer's excavator waited beyond the glass doors with its steel bucket lowered like a patient threat. Marcus entered through the side aisle in his faded blue work shirt, his suspended badge sealed inside a clear evidence pouch. Nia walked beside him holding Lena's gloves, then took her place safely with Rosa near the front. Marcus did not look like a man arriving to win. He looked tired, careful, and unwilling to leave the truth alone. Owen Pike spoke first. His voice carried without effort. I have served this theater for 22 years. No one wanted demolition, but public safety cannot be ruled by grief. The microphones gave a soft electric hum. Behind Owen, a large screen displayed photographs of cracked plaster, rusted pipes, and an empty balcony framed to make Bellwether look already abandoned. He described Marcus as a skilled but emotionally compromised employee who had ignored direct orders after learning his late wife once performed there. He never called Marcus dishonest. He called him vulnerable. It was a kinder word and more dangerous. Dale followed with a structural report and a calm warning about liability. Delay creates risk. Risk creates victims. No responsible contractor waits for tragedy. For several minutes, it seemed to work. Council members studied the photographs. A city attorney asked whether the glass projection, even if authentic, had any legal force. Owen's lawyer produced the release of Public Arts Covenant bearing Evelyn's signature and said the preservation obligation had ended years ago. A murmur moved through the audience. Claire Whitmore sat at the end of the council table with her silver pen closed between both hands. She did not interrupt. She had the authority to stop the hearing, but she waited to see which story could survive examination. When Marcus was called, he carried no speech. He placed Lena's gloves beside her old scholarship program, then turned the gloves face down. My wife's name explains why I stayed, he said. It does not prove what they did. The room settled. Claire's outside counsel began with the spotlight. The verified glass gobo appeared on the screen. projecting Evelyn Whitmore and the words held for public arts use. Next came the 1998 repair receipt matching Unit L7 and Q27. Then the scholarship program confirmed Lena had stood beneath that same light as a teenager. Owen's attorney rose. Sentimental history is not ownership. Marcus nodded once. That's true. The answer took some force out of the attack. The forged release came next. Its engineering attachment cited the Vanguard FX400 system in 2006. A city invoice showed the system was installed in 2011, 3 years after Evelyn's death. The air conditioning clicked off, and the silence it left behind made the turning of paper sound loud. Owen's lawyer recovered quickly. Administrative templates are reused. A later equipment name may have been inserted during digitization. For one moment, the explanation gave him the room back. Then Claire's counsel displayed the original microfilm image. The Vanguard model appeared on the paper before the document had ever been digitized. Marcus leaned toward the microphone. The file did not learn the name later. Badge records showed Owen entering the archive room at 2:14 a.m. Hallway footage showed him leaving with the box marked 14B. The recovered message to Dale appeared next. Move the archive box before Whitmore sees her mother's original amendment. Owen's lawyer called it ambiguous. Mr. Pike manages hundreds of archive boxes. Marcus did not accuse him. Then let the right box speak. Dale's permit was shown beside the inspection report. The permit had been approved 13 days before the inspection that supposedly justified it. Parking footage placed Owen's box in Dale's truck. A garage invoice documented cardboard fibers in the damaged rear latch the following morning. Still, no camera showed what the box contained. Owen straightened, sensing the gap. You have suspicion, he said. Not proof of an amendment. Nia shifted beside Rosa as a county clerk entered through the rear doors carrying a sealed envelope recovered from an auxiliary records vault. She did not leave her seat. She only slipped one of Lena's gloves over her own small hand and held Rosa's fingers with the other. The clerk placed the envelope beneath the document camera. Before its contents were announced, Owen said, "That copy doesn't include the trustee amendment." No one moved. The envelope was still sealed. Claire slowly set down her pen. How do you know what isn't inside? Owen's face did not collapse. Tightened by one careful degree. The clerk cut the seal. Inside lay a single signature page and a small brass key stamped with the number 27. Rosa stood behind Nia and whispered that the key belonged to the locked recording cabinet beneath the old sound booth. Every camera in the room turned toward the dark booth above the balcony as the city clerk carried the key up the stairs. The brass key turned with a dry metallic click, and the recording cabinet opened beneath the old sound booth. Inside sat a reel-to-reel tape sealed with dark red wax, the same 7-pointed star pressed into its surface, and a folded document marked Trustee Amendment, Deed 14B. The county clerk carried both items down to the stage while every camera followed. No one in the Bellwether Theater spoke. Claire Whitmore stood behind the council table with one hand resting beside her silver pen. Marcus remained near the aisle beside Nia and Rosa, his shoulders still, his suspended badge visible inside the evidence pouch. The clerk unfolded the amendment beneath the document camera. The paper bore Evelyn Whitmore's original signature, a matching notary entry, and language that left no room for private interpretation. Bellwether Theater was to remain in public arts use as long as community programming could reasonably continue. Claire was named successor trustee, but she had no authority to sell, demolish, or convert the building for commercial development without an independent public vote and a full audit of restoration funds. The false release had not ended the trust. It had hidden it. Owen Pike's attorney rose slowly. We need time to authenticate this. You'll have it, the county clerk said. The notary ledger copy was recovered with the original filing seal. A forensic examiner compared the wax impression to the star on the glass gobo, Claire's pen, and the 1998 repair receipt. The pattern matched down to a small break in the lower point. The reel-to-reel tape was inspected, photographed, and placed on a portable machine brought by the city archivist. The motor began to turn. Its soft mechanical whisper filled the theater. Evelyn's voice emerged through a layer of static. older and warmer than Claire remembered. "This stage is not a gift to my family," the recording said. "It is a promise to families who have never been allowed to believe a room like this belongs to them." Claire's fingers loosened around the edge of the table. The recording continued, naming the public trust, the scholarship program, and the requirement that financial records remain open to the community. It was not the legal instrument that stopped demolition. The amendment had already done that. But the voice explained why the law had been written. Owen stared toward the floor. Dale looked once. At the rear doors, then at the inspectors standing beside them. The evidence screen changed. Badge records placed Owen in the archive room at 2:14 a.m. Parking footage showed the box entering Dale's truck. The garage invoice matched the damaged latch. The forged release cited equipment installed after Evelyn's death. The demolition permit predated the inspection. The deleted message appeared last. "Move the archive box before Whitmore sees her mother's original amendment." Owen reached for a glass of water, but his hand struck the rim and sent it trembling across the table. "This was administrative confusion," he said, though his voice had dried to a whisper. No one answered. There was nothing left for one explanation to carry. Claire stood. She did not look at Marcus first. She faced the council, the residents, the theater employees, and the cameras. "Whitmore Urban Development is withdrawing the demolition request effective immediately. I am placing every bellwether file under independent control, referring the suspected forgery and diversion of funds to the county prosecutor, and requesting a temporary trustee appointed by the court." Dale's folder slipped from his hand and struck the stage with a flat slap. The licensing official informed him that his contractor's license was suspended pending review. Owen was notified that his access to theater accounts, records, and property had been revoked. No one dragged them away. No one shouted. The system they had bent was finally beginning to close around the evidence they had left behind. The city inspector then cleared one controlled projection from Unit L7. Marcus climbed the ladder again, checked the temperature gauge, and pulled the switch. Gold light crossed the theater. Evelyn Whitmore appeared above the red curtain, surrounded by the words held for public arts use. Claire's silver pen fell from her hand. It hit the wooden floor with a sound so small that everyone heard it. The room went completely still. Marcus watched the ballast needle rise and shut the light down before it overheated. He removed the glass gobo with protected hands and placed it into the archivist's case. He did not hold it up like a trophy. He stepped away from the center of the stage and returned to Nia. She slipped her hand into his and breathed out. Claire crossed the aisle slowly. "Mr. Reed," she said, "you were never asking me to save this place. You were asking me to stop destroying what I had not taken time to understand." Marcus looked toward Owen's empty chair, then at the residents who had almost lost their theater. "Truth doesn't need me to punish anyone," he said. "It needs us not to bury it again." Claire apologized to Marcus, Rosa, the employees, and the South Ward community in front of the same cameras that had recorded his suspension. Then Nia looked up at Evelyn's fading name and asked, "Did your mom help my mom stand there too?" Claire's face changed, because Justice had answered who owned the theater, but not what their mothers had left unfinished. Marcus tightened his hand around his daughters, knowing the next choice would not be about whether he had one. It would be about what kind of man he would remain now that everyone finally believed him. The crowd left Bellwether Theater more quietly than it had entered. Reporters lowered their cameras. Council members gathered the sealed evidence. Owen Pike's access badge was deactivated before he reached the lobby, and Dale Mercer was served notice that his contractor's license had been suspended pending review. Marcus Reed did not watch either man leave. He knelt beside Nia, checked the lace on her left sneaker, and asked if she was ready to go home. Claire Whitmore stood several feet away holding the silver pen that had fallen beneath her mother's name. "Mr. Reed," she said, "your suspension is rescinded. Your pay will be released today." Marcus closed his dented metal toolbox. It no longer looked like the property of a desperate maintenance worker. Every worn handle and oil-darkened corner now carried the quiet evidence of a man who had repaired what others had already decided to discard. "That fixes the record," he said. "The rest will take longer." Claire understood that he was not speaking only about employment. 9 months later, Bellwether reopened under the Bellwether Community Arts Trust, governed by South Ward. Residents, theater workers, parents, artists, and independent nonprofit advisors. Whitmore Urban Development returned the restoration funds that had been diverted, paid for the forensic audit, and surrendered unilateral control of the property. Owen faced charges for document fraud, misappropriation, and obstruction. Dale's company lost the demolition contract, and city investigators began reviewing earlier permits carrying his signature. No one celebrated their downfall on stage. Justice arrived through corrected records, preserved evidence, court filings, and rules made harder to bend in secret. Rosa Alvarez became Bellwether's paid archival advisor. Former workers were offered priority interviews or transition assistance. The Glass Gobo, the repair receipt, Lena's scholarship program, Evelyn's trustee amendment, and the restored recording were placed in the public archive, where no company executive could hide them in a private office again. A small exhibit explained that Marcus had not discovered the truth because he knew powerful people. He had discovered it because he noticed a cut wire, protected fragile records, listened to others, and refused to claim more than the evidence could prove. Claire offered him the position of technical director. Marcus declined the appointment. "Post it," he told her. "Let everyone apply." He interviewed before an independent committee and accepted the job only after a public vote. His first proposal was not a larger office or a company car. It was the Lena Reed Technical Apprenticeship, a paid program teaching stage electricity, equipment safety, and repair work to single parents, working teenagers, and people returning to employment after long absences. On opening night, Nia performed in a children's chorus beneath Unit L7. She did not give interviews or explain the investigation. Before the curtain rose, Marcus knelt and tightened her shoe while she held Lena's faded gloves against her costume. "Do you think Mom would be proud?" she asked. Marcus looked toward the repaired spotlight. "She would recognize the way you made room for other people." Nia nodded as though that answer was enough. Across the stage, Claire read Evelyn's final letter alone before placing it in the archive. Her mother admitted that she had spent years protecting public promises without explaining them to the daughter waiting at home. Claire was allowed to hold both truths. Evelyn had served thousands of families, and she had still left her own child carrying a wound. Healing did not require rewriting either life. Claire attended trust meetings without taking the head chair. She opened company records, answered difficult questions, and never asked Marcus to defend her intentions. Months passed before she approached him after rehearsal and asked whether he would have coffee at the diner across the street. "Not a meeting," she said, "and nothing connected to Bellwether." Marcus looked toward Nia, who was safely helping Rosa place labels on archive folders. Then he looked back at Claire. "Coffee," he said, "nothing owed." After everyone had gone, Marcus and Nia returned to the empty stage for the final safety check. He switched off the chandeliers, the aisle lamps, and the restored spotlight. Only the small ghost light remained at center stage, casting one warm circle across the floorboards. "Why leave it on when nobody's here?" Nia whispered. Marcus rested one hand on his toolbox. "So the last person leaving knows there's still a way back." They stood together without speaking, listening to the old building settle around them, and in that gentle pool of light, dignity needed no applause. Kindness had simply waited long enough to become a door no one could close again.